Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see some familiar faces. It's so good to see some new faces. It's good to see some people's relatives that I may not have met yet. This is very, very, very exciting. And I wanted to begin by saying that my name is Michal Weiss, in case you don't yet know me. I live in Crown Heights, and our family, primarily myself, but generally it's my entire family. We are all the people that run Living Chassidus. And Living Chassidus is an organization that is based primarily in Crown Heights, and we care for young women that come to Crown Heights, usually in the Shidduch stage. We originally started 8.5 years ago with primarily Balei Tshuva, which means people that became religious. And after they went to seminary, they studied and they were so inspired and happy. And afterwards they came back to Crown Heights, and most of them did not have family that would care for them, or, a home away from home. So I started it. It was a birthday celebration. I celebrated my birthday, and it was my project that I decided to start. I didn't picture it to end. I didn't think it was going to grow this big at that point, but Baruch Hashem, we're going and growing. And here we are, 8.5 years later. We have expanded our horizons. We now have a center in the center of Crown Heights. It's right across diagonal from 770. And we run all kinds of programs. We do life skills series, which we teach life skills to women. We have Chassidus classes. We have Torah classes of all kinds. And we are called Living Chassidus because we have a flavor that everything should be lived and experienced. And our concepts in Torah shouldn't just stay in the abstract. We should really change our lives for the good. And so therefore, we do a lot of classes that really affect the person's living experience, which is, for many people in our demographic, it's women who are in the dating stage. And so this led to many years of my involvement in Shidduchim, which is dating. And through those many years, I helped a lot of Shidduchim. I was the mashpia for a lot of the Shidduchim. I made a lot of Shidduchim, Baruch Hashem. I was actually just currently in Florida, and I got to visit one of my best friends who I actually made her Shidduch. And yeah, so that's where who I am, and that's where we come from. That's Living Chassidus, just in case you don't yet know about it. If you'd like to check out our stuff, we have a lot of content on our YouTube channel, which this recording will hopefully be there when it finishes. And we have a lot more classes over there. We also have classes on all the platforms, all the podcasting platforms, Spotify, and all of that. So you can check out a lot of what we do over there. Okay, so that's my introduction. When I was in seminary, I had the incredible opportunity to learn Shidduchim as a class. I don't think many seminaries do that, and I don't think even that seminary does it still. It just happened to be that one of my favorite teachers, she took care of us, and she decided she's gonna do a regular, I think it was more than 6 weeks, where she taught us all the steps, how all the pieces play out, and what's the purpose of each of the pieces. Because for many of us, it's hard to balance this life of Shidduchim, where we're so bombarded with ideas that come from not the Jewish perspective on dating. And so sometimes without us realizing, there's a bit of crossover, and we start to mix. Okay, my name is Michal Weiss, but I run Living Chassidus, therefore my name shows up as Living Chassidus on the Zoom. So that's who I am. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to share with you guys, everybody who's here. I want to first welcome. Let me just share what we have. Okay. Can everybody see what I'm sharing? Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Oh, wait, no, that is the right one. Right? Can everyone see? Yes. Okay. So as part of our program for today, I hope everybody received this PDF. It should have been attached to the email that gave you the access to today's class. And then I wanted to show you guys that in the previous weeks, we actually have been doing an entire course, which started on July 12th. And right now we're up to class 3. So you guys everyone's been invited. If you would like to listen to the previous recordings, you can register for the class. It is on our website, livingchassidus.org/Shidduch course. And you can certainly register for class 1 and class 2, and all other classes the recording will be updated on there. And you can receive all of our worksheets, which I think it's crucial for everybody. So I wanted to share as a welcome to the moms or possibly dads or possibly mashpiyas, friends, family, whoever it is that's here in support of whoever invited you. So I want to first thank you so much from the bottom of all of our hearts, because I've been there, I've done that, and the work of helping someone else find their zivug it's work. It's not simple. It takes a lot of commitment and dedication, and I know that you guys work very hard. So I want to thank you. And I also want to show that the singles who have joined this course are also working really hard, and today's class is an attempt at us helping you help them. So we want to make the Shidduchim experience as easy and straightforward and clear and enjoyable as possible. So here are some of the things that we've done in the previous classes. We have hopefully helped our singles find clarity for themselves, because sometimes I feel like it's hard for the person making phone calls when we feel like the single didn't, she's not clear and we're not clear about what she's looking for or he's looking for. We also brought in some Rebbe letters that spoke about it. The bolding is mine, not the Rebbe's. It's my bolding of things that I feel like are really relevant to what we're learning. So we have these letters, which you can get. And then we worked on, from the clarity that we receive for ourselves, we also worked on creating a profile that truly represents the single. And part of that profile, I hope everyone did it. And if you didn't, now this feels like parent-teacher conferences. So if you haven't yet spoken to your mashpia or whoever it is in your team, on your research team, about the clarity that you received by doing worksheet 8 and worksheet B from our course, so this is your loving reminder that you should probably do that, because you will help them do their job even better. Okay, so with that said, is everybody all good? Everybody's thumbs ups, smiles, waves? Okay, thumbs ups. Yay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, wonderful. So let's do this. I'm just going to move this to this side. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to welcome parents, mashpiyas, family, and friends. As you can see, I'm reading it right here. You should also have the PDF in your email, which you can open however you'd like to open it. But if you'd like to follow along, this is where I am. So I want to first start by saying thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your giving your energy and time, especially time. Time is the one thing that we can never get back. So the fact that you're giving time towards this single getting married, Hashem should bench you and bring you brachas ad bli dai. So I wanted to start with that. Our goal for tonight is to help make the researcher's job a lot easier, or a little easier. We all know that making reference calls isn't so simple. We have to keep in mind what the single is looking for. We have to come up with good questions, try to analyze and interpret the answers. And this course is here to help everyone in the singles research team to get the most out of the Shidduch system and know how to navigate research in the most easy and simplified way possible. So I want to, hold on 1 second. Technical difficulties. I want to make sure. There we go. Okay. So we are trying our hardest to help. We are trying our hardest to help you guys help them. So our goal is to have some clarity, and we're going to start by discussing the process. What is the process in which you guys come into play? So the goal of the Shidduch system is to give as much clarity beforehand for the singles, before the singles meet. That way, by the time the singles meet, they know, for the most part, we know we're not a Navi, but for the most part, they will know that this person is fitting to be of marriageable material. It doesn't mean that you have to absolutely find out every single thing and know that by the time, this is not one of those, they're going to meet on someone's couch and it's going to be a one-time date and they're going to have to decide everything right then and there. That's not how it works, at least not with us. But our goal is that by the time that singles meet each other, we know enough that they are able to be married to each other without hopefully any big skeletons in the closet. It's very, very hard to find out a lot of things on a date. It's very tricky to be able to ask honest questions and get honest answers when you're facing that person right in front of you. And we also know, as parents or siblings or mashpiyas or whatever role we play in this, we know that the single may not have full clarity for themselves about different things. It's also very exciting to be meeting someone of a different gender, it's a normal, natural reaction. And so therefore, many times we get carried away in the emotional hype and the excitement of the date, or how nice he was, or how sweet he was, or how much he opened the door for me, or these types of things. Or we went somewhere fun, so I had a fun time with him. That it could reach a point where the singles are liking each other without having really covered some of the very big topics that are important in life. And also there's a chance that because the atmosphere is so exciting, it may not be conducive to, hopefully they know how to date properly, which is one of the next classes we're going to discuss, but it may not be so conducive to be able to really get in the nitty gritty of the past, or certain details that we as the research team, we could do a much better job at digging in and finding out. So we want to get clarity about what the single is looking for and what's important for her or him. We want to know that for ourselves, we have that clarity. We also, to a certain extent, depending on where we fall in, whether we're a parent or a mashpia or whoever we are, we also, I think we were asked to do research for the person because that person trusts us and they trust our judgment to a certain extent. So there is also a certain extent of our own brain into it, like our own opinions, our own intuition. It shouldn't be everything, which is something we're going to discuss very soon, but it is an important part of it. And afterwards, to be able to share the information and analyze it together and say, okay, I called all these people, this is the information I got, which I'm going to give tools of how to do that in the easiest, most clear way possible. And being that this is the information I got, this is the decision that, either that everybody does together as a group, depending, again, different relationships work differently, but some people would rather have a whole discussion and say, these are my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on it? These are your thoughts on it. Back and forth. Sometimes the person just calls and says, okay, this is what I found out. He's this, and this, and you can make a decision. So it depends. Each one has their own system, but this could really, this mentality, this process of having a research team that's separate, that happens before the dating, before the singles get emotionally involved in something, it is actually incredibly beneficial. That way, when they do date, all they're trying to figure out is if they're meant for each other, as opposed to, are there some, weird skeletons in the closet that I have to go find out? I mean, we should always be on the lookout, don't get me wrong, but still, we're trying to make the work easier for them. Does that make sense so far? Nods, yeses, thumbs ups. Okay. Okay, so let's do this again. Okay. Okay, so I'm at the third paragraph. We want to make the research process as easy and comfortable as possible for all parties involved and get the information needed for the single to have the best chance at finding his or her spouse. Navigating the Shidduch system can be emotionally exhausting and confusing for many singles. There are times when someone will tell the single, just go out with him for coffee. We'll do the research later. This makes the single feel like they're making progress when in reality he or she is adopting a secular approach to Shidduchim and completely disregarding the Mayach Shalat HaLev approach. Okay, so let's have 1 second discussion about this. When we play our part and we have our good, incredible, mature, hopefully married perspective on the situation, we are able to make sure that things make sense intellectually in a logical progression before the emotions come. The Shidduchim system is not meant to be dry, but it's also not meant to be completely emotional. It's meant to be first logic based, first brain based, that things make sense. And again, we're going to discuss what all those things are. And then when the couple goes out, then they can have that dynamic of not being, so pressurized or so nervous or having to literally figure out if this guy matches anything that I'm looking for, but they have more or less what in common. And then they can figure out, okay, is he my husband? And then they can have the lev, they can have the heart. They're able to get emotionally more emotionally involved with the other person. Sorry, I just jumped. Okay. Having singles meet each other without doing proper research can lead to them getting emotionally involved with each other, even leading to engagement before important topics are analyzed and clarified. And this is one of the important things that we really want to do as part of this research. We want to have clarity about what the single is looking for, so that way we can look for those things in that person. And we're going to discuss how to do that now. Okay, the goal of the researcher is to be clear about what the single is looking for, assuming that a parent, mashpia, etc., has been in touch with them to make sure those things are healthy and realistic for them. So this is one of the reasons why we have the research team on here and the singles on here, because we also want to make sure that the singles have a healthy, realistic perspective of what to expect, what they're looking for. We're not having someone who is asking for, Prince Charming to come in a white horse, and every single time it's not Prince Charming in a white horse, but in a gray horse or a brown horse, then that's it, he's not mine. So again, we want to be realistic for ourselves, and I strongly suggest for anyone who hasn't yet taken this course that this helps you figure out how to find those things that are realistic. And then one of the homework pieces is to discuss it with a parent or a mashpia to make sure that those things really are what's important in life. Okay, gain clarity from a potential match's profile, and from there, know what questions to ask. So this is actually a really great part. We're going to go through profiles, and then we're going to build questions off of those profiles, and we're going to help make this system easier for you guys. Work towards finding clarity to see if the potential match fits the singles criteria. If the researcher believes that the potential match does not fit the singles criteria, they should be able to clearly explain why they think so. This way, the single can make a conscious decision to either go further with a match or decline the offer. Okay. Now, let's get started on the actual stages. Stage one. Stage one, clarity about what the single is looking for. Review what the single is looking for, which is worksheet A, which I hope everybody who's here has finished it. I gave you guys an extra week to finish worksheet A and worksheet B, so please finish those and then share them with your research team. So review what the single is looking for. If disagreements arise, discuss with good, healthy communication. And again, I hope that this is good and healthy communication. If, for example, a parent has certain things that are priority for the parent and they believe that it should be priority for the children, but in essence, it's not priority for the children. So that's something that should be discussed. It should be tried as much as possible to be on the same page together. I've had situations where parents call me and they say, I'm doing all this research for my daughter, and she cares about XYZ, but like I've been doing research because I care about A, B, C. And if you're not on the same page, then this research system is not really working. You're finding the things that are important to you, but they may not be the things that are important to the single. And sometimes they need to be mushed together. We need to find a good balance between the two. But she or he, being the single, can't marry the person that you force them to marry, which we all know that. And so too with the single, there's certain appreciation that should be had to the fact that we trust our parents and we trust our mashpia, that a certain, there should be a discussion that if something is really truly important for them, maybe we should consider thinking about it and see how important it can become for us. Okay, stage 2, reviewing a profile. So this is a wonderful piece that I think is going to help people a lot. And let's get started. Okay. When the researcher receives a potential match's profile, they should review it to see if it matches any or all of the qualities in the singles list, which again, the singles should have given you a list on worksheet A. They discussed what was important for them. They shared with you what was, what are their priorities. And so when you have that worksheet A, you can easily look through the profile and see, do I see anything from this? So for example, let's say for a certain single, it's very important that the bacher wants to work. She wants to have a home, or like, shlichus is important, but they don't want to go out and make a Chabad house somewhere. She wants to make sure that he's, she's looking for someone whose their finances are stable, or etc. So now we go and we say, okay, this in worksheet A, she pointed out that this is important for her. So therefore we go and we look, do we see that in that person? We have a guiding light. Now that we have worksheet A, we have that clarity of the my husband list. We have that guiding light, so we can say, okay, this is what's important for them. Does that match what this person is showing on his profile? And again, I know that profiles are just a piece of paper. It's very hard to put a full perspective, but the profile is the beginning stages. That's the basis. Be aware that the researcher or single may have their own opinions about the profile. Everyone should make note of their personal biases. Gut instincts and first impressions can be helpful, but do not let preconceptions stop you from being objective. It is important to be open-minded when making research calls. I've actually seen this a lot. Let me take a moment. Okay. So I want to actually discuss this a little bit, where many times, and I've had to do this myself. I've done a lot of research calls for a lot of people. I've done a lot of research calls. So many times we get a profile and we process it and we say, okay, this person went to that yeshiva. Last time she dated a person from that yeshiva, they were XYZ. They were not chassidish enough, or super chassidish, and it was like too suffocating for her and it didn't match. So therefore, somebody goes to that yeshiva, I really shouldn't be looking into that person. Like, that's just not, that whole yeshiva doesn't match what we're looking for. And sometimes we jump in and we make we have preconceived notions about this person, or we come up with ideas, we make assumptions. It's possible the assumption could be based on something that you think makes sense. It's possible that it's, to whatever extent, it's showing a certain personality trait that you have seen in somebody else that, like, ew, yucky, like, you know, it's not for my son, it's not for my daughter, it's not for my, you know, my girl. Again, we want to try our best and try our hardest to not make assumptions. We want to try to be aware of those thoughts and do research based off of them. So for example, if you call someone from that yeshiva and you say, hi, you know, last time, or I've met people from this yeshiva, does he fit that? Does he not fit that? What is he like in regards to, I mean, the previous example was his Chassidischkeit. What is he like in regards to his Chassidischkeit? And that way we're aware of our triggers, so to speak. We're aware of what our thoughts or our assumptions might be, and we take them and we put them into the research so that we're able to find out more information. But we shouldn't just jump in and make assumptions. Like, for example, I met somebody who went to Beis Yaakov, and so therefore I think all of the Beis Yaakov girls are exactly the same cookie cutter, you know. But no, not necessarily is that true, and not necessarily does that have to be true. So I think being aware of our assumptions could be really important, and we should have them, meaning we should be aware of them and do research based off of them, but we shouldn't just jump to conclusion till the end. Okay, can everyone see back to my screen? Yes? Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Using Google Docs. I think this is one of the greatest ideas that has ever come up in Living Chassidus ever. Okay, what do you do when you receive a profile? How do you know it's for you? In this tutorial, we will learn how to use the features in Google Docs to your advantage to help you figure out where to begin doing research. The system. This system makes it easier for the researcher to know what questions to ask based on the profile, based on what the single is looking for. This system ensures that the single's questions are being asked and answered, and it keeps all parties in the loop on the same page and actively involved in the process. So we'll see step 1. You're going to copy paste the entire profile into a Google Doc. Then the single, or you, depending on whoever, you know, both of you could do it. You then go and you highlight what are the things that you see that are important, whether it's something that you really like, whether it's something that you're curious about, or whether it's something that you think is a red flag. Then based on the highlights, you make comments, which again, we're going to show you in a minute. And then afterwards, you speak with your team to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and we can use the system to get the most information. Okay, so here we go. Step 1, copy and paste. Copy and paste every part of the profile into a new Google Doc. Title the document with the individual's name and share this Google Doc with your research team. Okay, so our name for today is Chassan Klein. It's a wonderful name. A huge shout out to Ruta for her creativity. Okay, so Chassan Klein, he is 27. He's from Minnesota. He has his email over yonder, or the email to his shadchan or his parent or exactly whoever it is. And when you see it, you then highlight it like this, and then you copy paste it, and then you open up a new Google Doc and you paste it into the new Google Doc. Okay, so that is step 1. Then you title the name of the Google Doc with the name. So Chassan Klein is over here. That's step 1. So far, so good for step 1? Thumbs ups, nods, smiles. Okay, yay, I'm not speaking just to myself. Okay, step number 2. There's this little pencil highlighter marker image right up here. So it says Google Docs highlighting tool, and either the single / or the research team can do this, and you can go through and highlight different pieces. So for example, for this particular female, she thinks that him being 27 is a wonderful thing. She likes the fact that he's 27. So she goes and she highlights it in green. Then they go on to discuss the work experience. And she says, wow, sales and tech manager So she's curious about it. What does that mean? B&H Photo and Digital in New York. How many hours is he working? What exactly is he doing? So she's curious about it. So then she highlights it in yellow. She continues on. He went to this yeshiva. Wow, she has many friends who have married guys from that yeshiva. So she says, okay, I have people who I can ask. I've also seemed to notice that some, certain people from this yeshiva tend to be more my style. So what does she do? Then she highlights that in green. And then she continues on with this process. So she's able to see, okay, now I'm curious about, looks like he became interested in Yiddishkeit through my campus. So it means he went to college. I wonder what happened over there. I'm curious about it. What was his college experience? How did that shape him? So she highlights it in yellow. He's a go-getter. He's ambitious. He's very determined. For her, those are things that are very important. So she really likes seeing that in a profile. She highlights it in green, et cetera, et cetera. So we go through the entire profile and we find those things. Yellow means I'm curious about it. Green means I'm happy about it. This is something that I appreciate seeing in a profile. And it seems like Hassan Bacher is a wonderful, wonderful guy. We're not really seeing any red. But if there's something that this may not be what I'm looking for, I'm not sure. And again, we're trying to be open-minded. We're trying to not make assumptions. So it's possible that it says, let's say, for example, that for her, it's important that, she's very worried about, let's say, if parents are divorced. So let's say she would have done this divorced over here. The parents are divorced. She would have done that in red. So it may not be a deal breaker because there's only one red piece. It's something that she is worried about, but she wants to learn more about. So let's say she would have done that in red, and then we base our questions off of that. So let's read through this. Read through the profile. When you find something that stands out as something that sounds amazing for you, click the highlighting tool and highlight it green. When you find something that you have questions about, want to look into more, or are curious about, highlight it in yellow. If there's something in the profile that worries you or sounds like a red flag, highlight it in red. And please do not assume. Okay. Moving on to step number 3. So as you can see, here's the highlighting tool, and right next to it, or a bit over next to it, it says Google Doc comment tool. So it looks like this, and now we're going to comment. Now it's the time to comment. Click over the areas you highlighted by color. In each area where you highlighted in yellow and red, use the commenting tool to type your questions. This way, your research team will know what you want to find out. You will also gain clarity about what information you still need to find out. So let's just put it this way. I think that for many people doing research, making up questions, coming up with questions to ask is one of the hardest parts of the entire process. It's like making cold calls is no fun for anyone. Making cold calls about something you don't really know about and you're not really clear what you're trying to find out, it's just a nightmare. So here, the single is trying to help you have clarity about what they are curious about, or clarity about what's important for them. You can also put your own questions in there, and then it's much easier. You have this Google Doc open up in front of you. You call the person, say hi, introduce yourself. This is, so-and-so, or some people are very careful. They don't really want to give their names. I don't know. I personally am a big fan of introducing yourself. It's menschlich, in my opinion, that the other person should realize that you're speaking to a human. And say I'm making a call on behalf, to do research into so-and-so. And then you just read through the questions. I have a few questions here. He is, how did the parents' divorce affect him? Which parent is he closer to? You have the questions right in front of you. So your cold calling is not so cold anymore because you have it right in front of you. It's less terrifying. Yes, you're calling a random stranger about and asking personal questions about someone else. I know that's awkward and hard, and I grant you that. And again, round of applause for the research team for all the hard work that you guys do. But here we're trying to make it easier. You'll have all your questions right in front of you, and all you have to do is ask those questions, and we're going to give some more tips and hints about how else we can make this easier. Okay, so as you can see in our profile over here, she wrote, he is within the age range that I'm looking for. Yay, she's happy about the green. She's curious about how the divorce affected him. That's a valid question that she, especially if, I mean, right now it's not in red, but we were playing pretend that it was in red. So that's a big question that she really wants answers for. How long is he planning on working in this particular location? Or does he want to start his own business? Did he start working on his business on the side, et cetera, et cetera. So you have all the questions right here in front of you, and it makes it much easier for you to make those calls. And it's not only easier for you, you'll see, because when you get answers to the questions, here on the bottom, it says comment. And so you can click on that button where it says comment, and then you can type in the answers that were given to you from the phone call. And so everybody's on the same page. The single can come over here and say, wow, these were the answers that we had. And then you guys can discuss it in person or over the phone. This is what they said. This is how I typed it up. For me, for example, I type in like notes because it's hard for me to type so quickly at full sentences. So then what I do is I set up a time to discuss it with a single, and we sit down or speak over the phone. We say, okay, this is what I heard, this is what they said, and then we go back and forth and we discuss it. Does that make sense so far? Yes? Okay, I got some thumbs ups and some nods and smiles. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so step number 4, speak with your team. Let your research team know that you annotated a prospective profile and take a look at the comments you've made. Discuss the kinds of questions you want to ask the references and what else you would need to find out before you continue the next phase. When your team starts to do research, they can reply to your comments on the Google Doc. This way, you have notes to refer back to at any time. The notes are also a great way for your team to stay in the loop. Oh, sorry, I went too far. There we go. Stages of research. Stage 3, making the calls. WhatsApp or text reference beforehand to schedule the best time to speak. I actually really appreciate it. It doesn't really work for everybody, so this is more of an optional suggestion. But there are many times that it's very helpful to have, when somebody messages me saying, hi, I'm calling, to do research on so-and-so, when's a good time for you? And they said, oh, wonderful, perfect. I can tell you exactly what time is good for me. And I have the mindset to be prepared to discuss that person at that point in time. So I personally am a huge fan of it, but again, it's your personal take on it. Free up space in your busy schedule to focus on research calls. And again, it won't be as daunting and as overwhelming if you have all the questions posted here on the profile one by one, that it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to come up with questions. Or I've had people call me and they say, hi, I'm calling to do research on, what's her name again? Who is she? And they totally blanked out. They don't really know who they're researching, and they don't really know what kind of questions they want to ask me. They haven't really been prepared. And so the types of answers that I'm able to give them may not be the types of answers that their single is looking for. Meaning I might be able to say that she's really nice and helpful, but the single is actually very curious about her work experience, or what's her goals for the future, which I didn't answer because I wasn't asked. Does that make sense? So yeah, kind of. Okay. Okay, ask open-ended questions and encourage storytelling. We're actually going to discuss that in a minute. And I think this is the 3rd, if not 4th time we say this because it's such a big deal. Please, 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 I beg you, please don't assume anything. Oh, they answered me like this, so therefore it must be like that. They said that he likes red cars, so therefore he must be this wild, You know, he drives like a crazy maniac because, you know, all my friends that had red cars all drive like crazy maniacs. Don't assume. Just don't assume. Anytime you feel yourself making an assumption, be aware of what the assumption might be, process it in your brain and say, okay, now set it aside and look open-mindedly at this person for who they are. Encourage honesty. This is a really, really, really big one. And the reason why I find it to be so crucial is, yeah, we're going to discuss it a lot more in depth in a minute, is because this is a tricky time period for people. Here, let me just, there we go. Okay, honesty. This is a very, very tricky time period for people because you're essentially asking a good friend or family member or teacher, cousin, okay, hold on one second. Teacher, cousin, etc., whoever it is, and we're asking them to tell us honest things. And most people don't want to set up a situation where the person isn't getting married because we're saying something negative about them. And so for them to be honest with us, it's a tricky thing. And I'm sure we've all been in a position where someone calls us, and I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully everyone that you get calls about, you're totally so happy to speak about in every step of the way. But sometimes it's not so simple. And sometimes we have to say things that might be hard. And we have to remember that the Abish is in charge. Hashem is in charge. Every pot has a lid. And even though that person who you're speaking about may not be perfect and you may see their imperfections, someone is going to find those imperfections and find them perfect for them. And so by us staying honest and by us creating an environment where the person can feel comfortable saying their honest opinion about the person they're speaking about without thinking that you're going to make a bad name for them, or you're going to, that's it, I'm going to tell all my friends never to date him or never to date him or whatever. Setting that type of environment, and it's not necessarily like a cookie cutter simple thing to do, but just starting the conversation from the perspective of even whether you say it out loud or not, but for in your own mind, thinking about the idea that Hashem is in charge and that everything I'm going to hear, even if it's not for my single that I'm looking for, I might be able to think of someone else, or my single might have a friend who she thinks this might match for. So we want to create an environment where everybody's being honest and saying the truth about other people without feeling that it's going to destroy their chances of marriage. Give me 1 second. Okay. The profile is a photo. Oh, okay. So there's a question about that. I'm going to answer it in a minute. Yes, a very good point. When it comes to the profile that has been highlighted with comments, please, please, please do not share that with anybody else. Obviously, that is private between the single and the research team. Okay, there was a question about the things that are in green. Yes, if you're able to ask questions based on the green, meaning the things that you like, to verify it, sure. I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful idea. Yes, another point that was given here, some people don't take phone calls from unknown numbers because all of the spam calls. So it's helpful to know to expect a call regarding the shidduch, meaning that it's very helpful to have someone to have someone do that for you. And in regards to being a lot of work, yes, getting married, it is a lot of work. So this process just makes it easier for you. It makes it easier for you, and it makes it easier for your research team, and it actually gives you the information that you really truly want to have, as opposed to just he is nice and chassidish, which we tend to get sometimes. Okay, let's go back and do this. Perfect. Okay. Encourage honesty. Whoops, jumped ahead. Okay. Follow each answer from a reference with, what does that mean? Can you share a story? We're going to discuss that a lot more in depth in a minute. But when people say something to you, so for example, let's say for your single, it's very important that the bacher should wear a hat and jacket, let's say. Okay. So you say, oh, what is he, what's his dress like during the week? What is his dress like during Shabbos? And if they say something along the lines of, he's I heard this once, he's like a penguin most of the time. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? We might take it for granted and we could assume that means he wears black and white, because that's usually what penguin means, but not necessarily does that mean he wears his hat, which is something that seems to be important for this single. Or for example, she really cares about someone who has a sense of humor. And so we can ask a question and the person can answer, yeah, he's very funny. So we could say, okay, what type of funny? Because we all know I think there's some dads on this call. So there's dad jokes, there's corny jokes, there's levels of corny jokes, there's sarcasm. There's so many levels of funny that we want to know which type of funny is this. So we could say, what does that mean? Or can you please share a story about him being funny? And I want to share, because I know that we're going to discuss in a minute, that storytelling is one of the most powerful things in reference calls. Okay, clarify what you just learned on the phone call, and say, if I understand you correctly, then, and so then you repeat what you heard in your own words. Don't parrot. And this is a great, wonderful, really, really, really wonderful communication skill to make sure that everybody feels understood and make sure that we're all on the same page, and say, okay, if I understood correctly, he speaks to his mashpia on a regular basis. He actually does call him, and he's not just, the mashpia for the profile, but he's actually his real mashpia, and they spend so much quality time together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this, I would say, if I understood you correctly, then, he does call his mashpia, he calls him this often. And again, don't repeat it exactly word for word, repeat it in your own words to the point that a person says, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Yes. Okay. So then you keep saying, so if I understood you correctly, he drives a red car, but he's actually not a maniac driver. He's actually a very safe driver. He just happens to like the color red. So when you repeat that and say, yeah, that's exactly him. He is not he's not a reckless driver at all. I'm just giving a funny example, but you catch the drift. Know which questions to ask whom. This is also very, very good. We're going to discuss that in a minute. Take notes and respond to the comments on the singles Google Doc. So if you have notes from the conversation, even if you're not able to be, some people are not so tech savvy to be able to answer the note right then and there as you're speaking to the person on the phone. But as soon as you hang up the call, you go back and you answer each of the questions exactly what you got from the call. Okay, moving forward. Copy and paste. Wait, sorry, I went the wrong way. There we go. Stories. When communicating with a reference, ask for stories as much as possible. Stories give a lot of context and information that the researcher may not even think to ask about. Stories give a bigger picture and lead to opportunities to ask follow-up questions. Stories also help define terminology. So for example, he said, and I get this a lot, he's so nice and he's so Hasidish. Nice and Hasidish. Every boy is so nice. He's so Hasidish. Every girl is so nice and so Hasidish. And I promise you, every girl, every person who's watching this Zoom right now, and every person who's going to be watching the YouTube recording at some point in the future will probably be nice and Hasidish, but they're totally different personalities who are going to marry totally different types of people. So we want to try and get clarity on the terminology. What does nice mean? Can you tell me a bit about how she's nice? Or can you tell me a bit about what his definition of Chassidish is? What does that mean for him? What does Chassidish mean for him? And so the more they tell stories, I met him in college and he was a wild child, and then he went to campus and he totally calmed down, and now he's like super, super Chassidish. He still has a passion about him of his younger years. You see, now you have context. You have context of what he was like before. but now he's channeled it into his, really driven miftzayim opportunities. He even like drives his tank, a mitzvah tank, every Sunday, right? So when we have a picture, we have more context of who the person was, who the person is. We get more of a feel of the person. Thank you to stories. It's all through the context giving through stories. So for example, back to the page. A reference mentions that the potential match is funny. There are many different kinds of funny, from sarcastic to corny to dry humor and more. Ask a follow-up question. Can you share a story about a time he was really funny? We can also learn if someone is a little awkward, because then we get stories. Stories give context. They give so much more information. So always, always, always ask for stories. And most of the time, answering with a story is much easier for a person. I have tons of incredible stories I can tell about my closest friends that I get calls about. And I that way I feel more comfortable and more confident that I'm giving over a better picture of who my friend is, meaning if I'm the one who's answering questions. So stories are a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, is everybody still awake? We're all good here? Yay, I got some thumbs up, some smiles. Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, open-ended questions and the importance of honest references. It is important to ask references open-ended questions to avoid leading the reference towards a certain answer. Otherwise, the reference will just have a hard time telling the truth. He or she will just affirm what you led them to say. A potential match's reference wants to see their friend get married. Therefore, they may be hesitant to be forthcoming about certain details that they may think the researcher will not want to hear. Here are some examples of what not to say. He seems nice from the profile. Is he nice? Wah, wah. That, who on earth is going to go and say, no, the profile is completely wrong. He's a total jerk. Chas v'shalom. You know what I mean? No one's going to say that. So if we don't ask questions in a leading way, and we ask more open-ended questions, it could actually help. So let's say we say, it says on the profile that his friends really enjoy spending time with him. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Can you tell me a story of when he spent quality time with his friends? And through that, you might be able to hear whether he is nice, whether he's, he goes out and does things for his friends, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's more secluded and he, isolated, and maybe that's the type of person that your single wants. And so that's great. We don't want this, maybe your single doesn't want Mr. Go-getter out there running the party. So again, if we don't lead in with I lost my words. If we don't lead in with the answer already, so then they can actually answer and we can get more information. So another example of what not to ask. He went to that yeshiva. The boys from that yeshiva are Chassidish. Is he Chassidish? So again, so no one's going to come and say, actually, he went to yeshiva, but he's like, doesn't match it at all. He's like totally, very few people would feel comfortable saying that. He has a plan for his finances, right? No pressure, no pressure. And even though for many people, finances is a very important question, and it's something that is part of their, their my husband list. But when we ask it that way, it's intense. Okay, things to keep in mind when encouraging a reference to be honest. So number one is Hashem is in charge. He decides who the single will marry, no matter what the reference says. It is important to be truthful and honest. When a reference is honest, they are helping their friend find someone who is the best fit for them. Honesty on reference calls saves singles from emotional energy, money, and time spent dating someone who is not good fit for them. I actually do start sometimes by saying that. Okay, the last one. After speaking to a reference who is honest and the single decides that the match is not a good fit, the single is in a position to suggest the match to someone else. So these three things, I have actually mentioned them on phone calls at different occasions where I say, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I have a few questions, but I wanted to just say that Don't worry about it. Please be honest with me. And I would never, I would never say, and I would never pass this information on to other people. But I do happen to know, it's possible I might know someone else, even if it doesn't match the person I'm looking for. I know someone else. So if you could just, we could just tell me XYZ, and then I begin the questions. So like in a smooth way, try and add that into the conversation so that people can have a little reminder that they're trying to be honest. Okay, who should I ask about what? So personally, and I think I'm going to get that in a minute, but my favorite phone call is the mashpia, which we're going to discuss in a minute. But there's different questions that we want to ask different people, and different people might know the single differently. So when we go through the profile and we have all of our questions over here, we could also think, okay, his friends might know about his, what he does in his free time. What are his hobbies? His Rosh Hashiva probably does not know that. He might, but it might not be the right person to ask that question. But for example, the mashpia is the type of person that you can ask those tough questions, which I personally, one of the ways to ask it, one second. There we go. So one of the biggest questions that people have is, what are the person's flaws? Because when you're marrying them, you're marrying both sides. You're marrying the wonderful, incredible, so nice, best roommate, best friend, best guy ever. But you're also marrying the things that the person's working on. Nobody's perfect, and that's fine. But it's good to know as much as possible beforehand. So when it comes to asking a question about what the person struggles with, instead of wording it, what does he struggle with? Because no one's going to have a fun time answering that. Imagine if somebody called you about your best friend and said, what does she struggle with? What's her biggest flaw? You're not really going to have such a great time answering that. But a mashpia who hopefully has a good head between his shoulders and has the moral compass to be the mashpia for somebody else, you could actually ask and say, what is something that they're working on? This allows the mashpia to tell honest, good answers. And at the same time, it allows it to be done in a positive light. We all are working on something. I'm working on something. I'm sure every single one of you on this call has something that you yourself know you're working on. There's probably even things that you should be working on, but you may not necessarily be working on right now. But all of the above, it's good to know. And it may not be a deal breaker. It may not be, somebody's working on not watching not Jewish things. And that's fine. It might be that for that single, she's also working on that, and she'd be happy to have someone to partner up with in the process of stopping. Or, he's working on getting some clarity in regards to where he wants to live. And for that single, that might be great because she has clarity. She wants to stay in Crown Heights, or she wants to move to Florida. She wants to move to Cleveland. She wants to move to wherever. So it's fine that he's working on getting clarity, even though he doesn't yet have it. And so asking it in that way, what is something that he's working on, or what is something that she's working on? And I personally would suggest asking the mashpia. It's possible you could ask other people, but they may not have such clarity unless he's not so close to his mashpia, which is a whole other discussion. And that's something to note. And to your point, okay, let me just check and see. There's a question over here. Very good question. What advice do you have for people listed as references answering these questions? How should the single prepare them? Probably a whole other class. That is a little bit of a whole other class, but I do want to answer it here. That the same preparation, which I do in the Shidduch course that we're going through right now, I do tell the singles to go through their references and call them and have a discussion and share the My Husband page, which we made in class 1. And share that, and share to whatever extent is public to be shared, and share their new freshly made Living Chassidus version of their profile, which should have a lot more good information about them, and have a discussion with each of the references so that reference has the answers to be able to ask the questions. How can the question about the finances be better phrased? Very good question. I'm going to go through it in a minute. that is a different in regards to, according to the halachas of Lashon Hara. If you have a question that it is something that really truly is a question of Lashon Hara, then you should speak to your Rav. From my understanding, I mean, I guess it depends on every person's negative thing. I don't know. I can't really answer that on a general answer, but you can certainly speak to your Rav if you have a question about that. Most of people's things that they're working on, from the research I've done and from the Rav questions that I've asked in the past, unless it's really truly like a skeleton in the closet, so then yes, you really should ask. If you feel that it's something so deep and intense or whatever, then that's something that you should, if at any point in time you feel uncomfortable, you should definitely ask, meaning ask a Rav for guidance on that. Okay, let's jump back on. Hokey dokey. Okay, friends. So here are some sample questions we could ask about friends. How does a single interact with other friends? How does the single respond to disappointment? That's something that a friend might be able to see and might be able to answer. What does he do if he loses a game? What kinds or types of people does he hang out with? What does he do in his free time? Hobbies. How often do the reference and the single hang out together? Actually, that's a very important one, which I want to suggest you ask a lot of people. I've had times when I get a phone call and the reference is the high school principal, and that bacher hasn't been in that high school, or that girl hasn't been in that high school in over 5-6 years. So we want to make sure that the people that you're calling actually know the single right now. So how often do you guys speak together? When's the last time you saw him? How much time do you spend together? All those questions will give you more context as to how much of this person's answers are actually relevant to what the singles really like. Oh, and then this one, do they have the number of someone else that you can talk to? I personally do like that. Many times I'm able to find out more information. And again, I'm not trying to dig because I'm trying to find these horrible, terrible things, but I just want to get more context from a wider perspective, from a wider group of people. So yes, sometimes if I'm able to get more people's numbers, so then I can go and call. And a good thing to do is that even if you call more people, ask them the same questions and you get more context of about the person. Okay, family friend, about the family history. So for example, in the example we did earlier, the single was very curious about the parents' divorce and how it affected him. And again, parents go through things, and in life, nobody's perfect, nothing is perfect. The main question is how it affected the bacher. So family history, what is the parents' marriage like? Which parent is the single closest to? Meaning, for example, the bacher is super close to his mom. So then we ask questions about the mom, and we get a feel for what this bacher is looking for, or what he sees as a mother figure. It may not be what he's looking for in his wife, but we get a very big model of reality from our parents and from the marriage that we live through, which is usually our parents' marriages. So asking those types of questions, who is he closest to? How is their marriage like? Sometimes I ask, it's a funny question, and sometimes people laugh and we make a whole joke about it. But sometimes I do ask, like, who wears the pants in the house? Because it's possible that single wants that, or maybe he wants the polar opposite, but at least it's good to know what what his family life was like. What do you know about his relationship with each parent? Who is the family's rabbi? That's another really big one, because then you could also ask the rabbi some questions if they're not yet on the call. Okay, mashpia. How did you meet him? I always start with a question like this because then I get an automatic story. How did you meet him? And I could even ask that for the family friend. I could even ask that for the friend. How did you meet him? And then you get some good stories. Can you tell me a story about how you know him? How often do you talk? That's a really big one. Again, remember, we're trying to get context to see if this mashpia actually knows him or not. Does he speak to you about shidduchim? Huge, 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 huge. Because some people have a mashpia and then some people have a shidduchim coach or whatever. So this could be really, really helpful information. If not you, who does he speak to? And then we get that person's number and then we ask a lot of questions. Has he dated anyone who was, certain personality traits, who was, et cetera, et cetera? What is his or her viewpoint on Chassidishkeit? That's another great way of having an open-ended question and yet still asking about Chassidishkeit. What does he do on a weekly or daily basis? That's usually a question in regards to, let's say, some people who it's important that their husband go to minyan on a daily basis. Some people don't go on a daily basis. Some people learn. Some people have a charusa. They don't have a charusa. And what he does, what his schedule is like on a daily basis, if the mashpia, let's say, knows, could also give you an idea of what his priorities are. Maybe he spends a ton of hours at work and he doesn't really have so much time to learn. He barely has time to do chitas. That's something that you want to know, you want to be aware of if that's important for you. Okay. I feel like I've been talking a lot. It's so hard. The downside of Zoom. I miss you guys in your commentaries. Okay, last section, and then we're going to open up the floor for some more questions. So everyone, meaning anybody else that you get, you could ask questions. So for example, I understand he went to X yeshiva. It doesn't really have to be the yeshiva. It could also be he's from this hometown. He's from Melbourne. He's from whatever. What was his experience like there, right? So we want to ask questions based on the profile and what was his experience like there. What type of personality do you think would bring out the best in him? This is a very, very good question. Anytime somebody asks me this question, I literally smile from ear to ear and I say, you're doing really great research. Even if the person may not know, but it's a very good question to ask because it makes the person think about the other person's personality. So for example, let's say you're calling a best friend. So now the best friend has to really think, I wonder what would bring out the best in her. And then she thinks about it. She grapples, she talks it out with you usually, and you get a very, very robust idea of what that personality is like and why they think that type of personality would bring out the best in them. So for example, I've had people who say, I'm just giving an example. Oh, she's super organized. So I really think somebody who's disorganized and Tzaflagan would be really hard for her. And then it gives a lot of clarity. Okay. So this is something I wouldn't have thought to ask. I wouldn't have asked about this, but this bacher is a total mess, and it may not be a red flag that we say okay, that's it. They're not going out because she's tidy and he's messy, but it's something to be aware of. And it gives you a lot of context into everything else. What kind of personality traits is he or she looking for? What kind of lifestyle does he want to live? This is really good as well. You want to have clarity about where they're going in their future. It's possible that everything fits and she's, she were to meet him and she's totally gaga over him and he's so wonderful. And then they realize he wants to move to Alaska because he loves the cold and she can't stand the cold. She's allergic to the cold and her skin cracks. And it's oh my gosh, what? I never wanted to move to Alaska. And he always wanted to move to Alaska. And again, this could be a small thing, but we want to have clarity beforehand. We want to know these things. We want to be aware of it. And that way, when we make a decision based on these answers, we can actually grade things and put value up to them. Okay, what is he working on? I've said that already. Ask about things listed on the resume. Yes, ask about things that are other references mentioned. So yeah, do follow-up. So for example, his other reference mentioned that he teaches a shir in the local shul. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And sometimes they say, oh, wow, I had no idea. And I'm oh, interesting. If you didn't know, ask questions that will help you find out if he does or does not have the traits listed on the singles My Husband list, which again, hopefully singles, all the singles on this call, please share that or share the version that's shareable with your research team. They need it. This is very important for them. Okay, so now let's say we ask a bunch of these questions, and now everyone who registered for this course has all these questions. You can go back and you can play around with them and, you know, see how many of them fit what you're looking for, how many of them don't fit what you're looking for, and use them. They are yours for the taking. Go find out all the information. Now, step number 5 is one of the most important. Once you have put those answers on the Google Doc, you set some time to meet with each other, whether it's over the phone or Zoom or in person, and you go through the answers together, right? So just a reminder, over here we have all the comments, and each of the comments had a question. Now, if the greens and yellows outweigh, and let's say you have clarity about the yellows and you like them, you like the clarity that you got, so then this is definitely a worthwhile suggestion to look into. It's definitely, and you have the clarity right here in front of you, right on the page. You have clarity. Should I be dating him? Yes. All of these pieces make sense. I should be dating this guy. This is exactly the type of person I'm looking for. If there are some reds, so for example, let's say she did all her research about the divorce and she has so many other good qualities and has heard so many good things about this guy, and the only downside, or the only, not even downside, the only thing she's a bit worried about, because she's never dated someone who's divorced, whose parents are divorced, or et cetera, so she can leave that as a red, and then she can make that conscious decision. Am I willing to meet this person even though I'm curious about this, even though I'm worried about this? And so therefore, which we're going to learn in the next class, you'll be able to know, when you have that red flag, you'll be able to know what kinds of questions to ask him in person when you do date him. When you date him, you already know that you want to go clarify all the greens, right? So you like the fact that he went to this yeshiva, let's say. So maybe he loved that yeshiva, and that's wonderful. So now you're going to ask him questions about it, and this is great. You have more information to find out. But also, you can ask him questions about those things that you're more worried about. And again, if a big chunk of these things suddenly turn red, let's say all the yellows turn red because you realized he's involved in his community, but is he really? He's actually not. His mashpia said that he really doesn't have a share. He doesn't, he just said that because he learns with one guy on his couch once in a while. And that's not the type of personality you're looking for. So then you also have the clarity right in front of your eyes. Maybe this guy is not meant for me. Maybe this is not the type of person I should be dating. And again, mayach shalit al-lev. We want to make sure we're making conscious decisions out of clarity, not out of, his picture looked pretty. He looked so handsome. He went to that yeshiva, and the last guy dated from that yeshiva was so wonderful. He must be great. No, we have it right in front of us. This makes sense. This adds up. And even if we have things that aren't exactly, again, we're not looking for Prince Charming and his white horse, and if he comes with a brown horse, we're kicking him out. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for someone who matches at least most of our things, or enough of them that we're willing to see and be curious about the things that are in red. And again, a mashpia should be involved. A parent should be involved to say, maybe this red flag really is too big of a deal. Maybe we really can't handle this red flag. Maybe this red flag gives us clarity that he isn't for you, right? So this is not for you, the single, to decide entirely on your own. You could also ask for help. You have an entire research team. You hopefully have a mashpia. We've had this discussion last 2 classes. Mashpia is very, very important. And you hopefully have good and wonderful, healthy relationship and communication with your parents, so they can also be a tool in helping you have clarity and helping you get the information you need to get. Okay. Does this make sense so far? Yes? No? Okay. I have some questions. Let me go through some question answer. Check the time. Okay, wonderful. We have a few more minutes. What was the end of your sentence, Oive? I forgot what sentence it was. Most of people's negative stuff that you did research on, what was the end of that? Well, it's helpful to know. It's helpful to, I don't know what the end was, sorry, but I'm going to give a bit of information about what I think I was talking about at the time. So most of the people's negative stuff that you did research on, it's helpful to know, again, no one's perfect. And so you're marrying them for everything, and you're also not perfect. So it's possible that even the negative, quote unquote, negative stuff that they're working on, it might be something that you feel comfortable and confident to say, like, yeah, I'm willing to marry someone who's dealing with that. And I'm willing to marry someone who's working on that. I myself am working on something like that, or I myself am working on whatever. So all of this, I think, is very, it's helpful information, and it may not be the bad red flag skeleton in the closet that says, like, that's it, I can't marry the guy. Okay, next question. About the question, what personality brings out the best in him? Friends might not be aware, single might have another idea. So maybe it's a good idea to keep in mind what you hear. Yes, that is correct. A friend may not always know. And yeah, to keep aware and be aware that they may, even if they give you an answer, that might not be the most accurate answer. And so that's one of the reasons why I usually ask primarily the mashpia. I ask that question to mashpia. But yeah, it's good. It's good to keep that in mind, that the friend might not be giving exactly what you're looking for. What's an average number of references to call regarding one person? Well, it kind of depends on how much information you get and how much information you need. And I guess that also depends on the person who did this course and who got clarity, meaning the single, let's say girl or bacher, who did this course and got clarity on what they're looking for, how much of it you really need to find out, and how much you were able to find out on 1 or 2 calls. I would say probably 3 is a good number. But again, it's possible that you're still curious about whatever it is. You're curious about how, his Chassidischkeit, how Chassidish he is, and what does that really mean? He went to Bernois, so it must mean he's like the most Chassidish, super wow. But meanwhile, now he like can barely keep up going to Minyan every day. So it's like, okay, where is he? So it's sometimes you might need to ask more questions, call more references. Yeah, so I guess it kind of depends on that. References opinion. Oh, the context was if it's lashon hara, halachically allowed to talk about it. If you have something about a single that you feel it might be lashon hara to share about them, then I would call your personal rav and ask whether you're allowed to share that about that person. I think that's the conclusion of that. Yeah, I think that's the end of that. Okay. I think I answered all the questions. Let me just go one more run through. Okay, there's a question here. Do you offer a course for singles who have been dating for a long time, meaning older singles? I have not yet made a specific course for older singles. I think a lot of what I share here would be very, very helpful for them. But I have not made something particularly just for them. So that's the answer so far. Okay, so let me stop the recording for a second, and I'll stop the recording in a second. So I want to again invite everybody, if you haven't yet taken this course, all the recordings are still available. You can still join. You can go on our website, livingchassidus.org/Shidduch course, and you can sign up. All the recordings, all the PDFs, all the worksheets, everything's available. And over the next 2 weeks, we will be going back in person to learn in our center in Crown Heights. So you can join us for those upcoming classes and catch up on the previous classes. You can also be aware that we are about to start our Tishrei and Elul and Tishrei program called SAI, Systematic Avodah Initiative, and be on the lookout for that information. The registration will begin very soon. And yes, you can check out all of our other programs on on YouTube and on our podcasting platforms. Just look up Living Chassidus. And you can check us out. And a huge shout out to our leadership team for helping us with this. Check us out on Instagram or Facebook and on social media, so you can be aware of what we're up to.